3 months passed, and the galaxy did not notice. Archivist Drenai was the first to see something strange. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had spent most of his life buried in data streams and records. His job was to track the flow of information across the Council network, every signal, every transmission, every communication between the 32 member species. It was boring work, and most of the Council forgot he existed. But Drenai was good at his job, and he noticed things that others did not. On a quiet morning in his office, deep inside Station Oralis, he pulled up the communication logs for the past 90 days and ran a standard filter. The results made him stop. Human channels were silent. Not reduced, not low. Silent. Every civilian frequency, every trade channel, every diplomatic line, every emergency contact, all of them dead. The last human transmission in the Council network had been logged 86 days ago. It was an automated message from a relay station that read, "This facility is now offline. Thank you for your cooperation." Drenai stared at the screen for a long time. Then he stood up and walked to Ambassador Selvek's office. Selvek was busy. He was always busy, usually with schemes to increase his own influence within the Council. He looked up when Drenai entered and frowned. "What is it, Archivist?" "The humans have gone silent," Drenai said. "All of them. Every channel is dead." Selvek waved a hand. "They are sulking. The containment provision hurt their feelings. They will come back when they get hungry for trade." "With respect, Ambassador, I do not think this is sulking," Drenai said. "The pattern is too complete, too organized." Selvek's frown deepened into irritation. "I do not have time for this. The humans are not a priority. Go back to your data." Drenai left. He was not satisfied, but he had learned long ago that powerful people did not listen to archivists. Far from Oralis, on the other side of Council space, a young human pilot named Caleb Stone was flying the last mission he would ever fly in alien territory. His convoy was 6 ships, all of them loaded heavy with grain, water purifiers, and medical supplies. Their destination was the Marathi famine zone. The Marathi were insectoid beings, tall and thin, with clicking voices and large dark eyes. A fungal blight had destroyed their ability to grow food decades ago, and for the past 9 years, human convoys had been their lifeline. Every 3 months, ships like Caleb's would arrive with enough supplies to keep 3 million Marathi alive. It was hard work, and the pay was terrible. But Caleb did it because it mattered. He never made it. Halfway through the transit corridor, 3 Draelith warships dropped out of hyperspace and blocked his path. A captain named Vreth came aboard with 6 armed soldiers. Vreth was big, even for a Draelith, with thick gray skin and small eyes that looked at everything with contempt. "Your ships are in violation of hyperspace lane restrictions under the containment provision," Vreth said. He did not look at Caleb when he spoke. He looked at the cargo manifest on his datapad. "These are relief supplies," Caleb said. 3 million people are waiting for this food. "Not my concern. Your species was told which lanes you may use. This is not one of them. The approved lanes would add 4 months to the trip. The Marathi will starve." Vreth looked up. His small eyes were flat and cold. Then they should have chosen better allies. The supplies were impounded. Caleb and his crew were detained for 6 hours in a cold holding cell on the Draelith ship. Then they were released with empty cargo bays and a formal warning on their record. Caleb sat in the cockpit of his empty ship and stared at the stars. Then he opened a secure channel and sent a report to Ethan Grant. Ethan read the report at his desk on Earth. He read it twice. Then he set down his coffee, opened the recall order that had been sitting in his drafts folder for 3 months, and pressed send. The last human aid ships in Council space began their journey home. There was no announcement, no broadcast, no angry declaration. Ships simply undocked from alien stations, powered up their engines, and left. Relief workers said goodbye to their alien colleagues with handshakes and quiet words. Medical teams handed over patient files and walked to their transports. Engineers left behind manuals and toolkits, neatly organized on workbenches. On the Crescent homeworld, the chief communications technician noticed that the relay network was starting to fail. Error codes were appearing in systems that had run perfectly for 15 years. He pulled up the maintenance schedule and saw that the next service visit from the human engineering team was due in 2 days. He sent a message to their contact frequency. No one answered. He tried again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Aaron Cross, the man who had designed and built most of the Crescent relay network, was already back on Earth. He was sitting in his apartment in Houston, eating a sandwich and reading a book. He had spent 7 years maintaining that network, 7 years of 12-hour days and sleepless nights, keeping the communication backbone of 40% of Council space running. Not once had the Crescent said thank you. Not once had they asked him to train a local team. They had simply assumed he would always be there. Back on Aralis, the disappearances were starting to add up, but no one was connecting them. In one session, a minor delegate mentioned that a human trade post in the Gelen corridor had been abandoned. High Legislator Vorath noted it and moved to the next topic. In another session, a different delegate reported that a human hospital ship that had serviced 4 systems for the past decade had departed without explanation. Vorath frowned, but said nothing. Laura Dunn was worried. She was a mid-level alien diplomat who had worked with humans for years and considered many of them friends. She had always thought the Council treated humans unfairly, but she had never had the power to change it. Now she was trying to reach anyone she knew in the human delegation, and every single line was dead. She tried Claire Bishop's personal frequency. Nothing. She tried Danny Mercer's public channel. Static. She tried 6 other contacts, people she had shared meals with, people who had helped her through difficult times, people she cared about. Every one of them was gone. She went to Elder Pale, the oldest member of the Council. Pale was ancient and slow, his body bent by centuries of life, but his mind was still sharp. Laura sat across from him and told him what she had found. Pale listened in silence. When she finished, he closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he opened them and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was sadness, deep and heavy, the kind that comes from watching something terrible happen that you warned everyone about, and no one listened. I told them, Pale said quietly, 40 years ago, when the humans first arrived, I told the Council that this species was different. They did not come to conquer. They did not come to trade. They came to help. And I said that if we treated them with cruelty, they would not fight us. They would simply leave. And the day they left would be the day we learned what we had lost. He looked at the ceiling. No one listened. They never do. Laura left his chamber with a cold feeling in her chest. That night, she pulled up the galactic map on her personal terminal. She filtered for human signatures, ships, stations, outposts, relays, anything with a human identification code. The map had once been dotted with thousands of bright points scattered across the galaxy. Now it was dark, a vast empty stretch of nothing where a civilization used to be. The humans were gone, and almost no one had noticed. 6 months after the last human ship left Council space, the galaxy began to break. It started slowly, the way a crack starts in a dam. Small at first, easy to ignore, then wider, then impossible to stop. The Marathi were the first to fall. Without human food convoys, the 3 core worlds of the Marathi civilization ran out of grain within 8 weeks of the last delivery. Rationing held for another month. After that, people began to die, not in dramatic explosions or battlefield charges, but quietly, in homes and shelters and hospital wards, one by one, until the numbers became impossible to count. The Marathi ambassador, a thin and dignified being named Theron, stood before the council and begged for help. His voice clicked and trembled as he spoke. 11 million of my people have died in the last 4 months, he said. We have no food. We cannot grow food. The humans fed us for 9 years. We need someone, anyone, to take their place. The chamber was quiet. Vorath looked around at the other delegates. No one spoke. The truth was simple and terrible. No other species in the council had the agricultural technology, the logistical networks, or the sheer willingness to feed 3 million people on the other side of the galaxy for free. The humans had done it because they wanted to. No one else wanted to. The council voted to form a committee to study the problem. Theron stared at them. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed on the chamber floor. 2 aides rushed to help him. The session continued. On the Crescent homeworld, the relay network failed completely on a Tuesday. One moment, 40% of council space had faster-than-light communication. The next moment, it did not. Error codes cascaded through systems that no living Crescent understood. The network was human technology, designed by human minds, built by human hands, and maintained by human engineers who were now 8,000 light-years away, eating sandwiches and reading books. Ships were stranded. Trade routes went dark. Emergency signals could not be sent or received. A freighter carrying 200 passengers suffered an engine failure in deep space and sent out a distress call that no one heard for 11 days. By the time help arrived, the air recyclers had failed. There were no survivors. The Crescent government released a public statement admitting that they could not repair the network. They did not have the expertise. They had never thought to learn because the humans had always been there to fix things. The statement did not include an apology, but it did not need to. The shame was loud enough. Then the plague came back. The Velith had nearly gone extinct 12 years ago when a virus swept through their population. Human researchers had developed the cure in 6 months, working around the clock in a joint lab on the Velith homeworld. Human pharmaceutical ships had manufactured and distributed the treatment for free across 4 affected species. The Velith called it the Miracle Year. They built a small statue of a human doctor in their capital city. Now a variant of the virus had emerged, and it was spreading fast. The cure formula existed in the Council's medical archives, but the formula was useless without the manufacturing capability to produce it at scale. That capability had been on human ships, ships that were no longer there, ships that had been crewed by people who had once stayed up for 3 days straight to make sure alien children did not die, and who had been rewarded with the highest trade tariffs in the galaxy. Natalie Voss, sitting in her lab in Colorado, read the reports coming through human intelligence channels. Megan Tate's networks were still active, still listening, still watching. The Council did not know it, but human eyes were on them at all times. The plague is spreading to 2 more species, Natalie said to Aaron Cross over a video call. The Velith variant has jumped to the Kasari and the Gelen. Aaron was quiet for a moment. How bad? Bad. Without the treatment at scale, they are looking at quarantine zones covering 12 systems, maybe more. Aaron rubbed his face. We could help them. We have the manufacturing capacity. We have the formula. We could, Natalie said, but we were told to stay in our 3 systems, remember? The silence between them was heavy. In the outer territories, the pirates came. For years, human patrol ships had volunteered for border security duty in the wild sectors of Council space. It was dangerous, unglamorous work, and no one in the Council had ever asked them to do it. Human captains flying human ships along the ragged edges of civilization, keeping the raiders and slavers and smugglers from preying on the weak. Now those patrols were gone, and the raiders knew it. 3 Council member worlds were hit in a single month. Supply depots were looted, Civilian transports were boarded. A passenger liner carrying 4,000 people was seized by a pirate fleet and held for ransom. War Chief Gorath scrambled his Draelith fleet to respond, but his ships were stretched across too much space. He had always had help holding the line. He had just never admitted it. In his private quarters aboard his flagship, Gorath sat in the dark and did something he had never done before. He pulled up the deployment records for human patrol ships over the past 15 years. The numbers were clear. At any given time, human vessels had covered 30% of the outer border. 30%. For free, without orders, without recognition, without a single vote of thanks from the Council. Gorath closed the file and stared at the wall. He was a warrior. He understood strength, and he was beginning to understand that he had been very wrong about what strength looked like. On Aurelus, Vorath called an emergency session. The chamber was full. Every delegate was present. For the first time in decades, the word human was spoken not with contempt or dismissal, but with something that sounded like fear. Why were we not warned? Vorath demanded. Why did no one tell me the scale of what was happening? Archivist Drenai stood. He had been waiting for this moment. He activated the central display and began his report. In the past 9 months, humanity had withdrawn from 1,247 aid programs. They had abandoned 340 joint infrastructure projects. They had ended 89 medical missions. They had pulled out of 56 peacekeeping operations. The total economic damage was estimated at 4.7 trillion galactic credits. The loss of life, directly caused by the withdrawal of human services, was already above 40 million and climbing. Then Drenai showed them the number that broke the room. Humanity, the species ranked dead last in every council vote, had been the single largest contributor to galactic humanitarian aid. Not the Draelith with their massive fleets, not the Crescian with their ancient wealth, not any of the proud elder races who had looked down on humans for 4 decades. Humans had given more, done more, and saved more lives than any other species in the Council, and no one, not once, had ever said thank you. The chamber was silent. Vorath ordered a delegation to go to human space and demand an explanation. Selvek led the fleet. They arrived at the border and found automated buoys transmitting a single message on repeat. Human space is closed to non-authorized vessels. We wish you well. Selvek tried to push through. Tessa Hale detected his ships from her sensor post and activated the defensive grid. No weapons fired, but every navigation beacon went dark. Every hyperspace lane marker vanished. Selvek's fleet was suddenly blind in unfamiliar space, surrounded by silence. They turned around and went home. On Earth, Claire Bishop watched the sensor data from her office. She saw Selvek's fleet retreat. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a deep, tired sadness that it had come to this. She turned off her screen and went outside. The sun was setting over the mountains. The air smelled like pine trees. She stood there for a long time, breathing. 1 year after humanity walked away, the Galactic Council was falling apart. The numbers told the story. Trade across Council space had dropped by 38%. 14 species had declared economic emergencies. The Marathi death toll had reached 40 million. The Velith plague variant had spread to 5 worlds, and quarantine zones now covered an area larger than some species' entire territories. Pirate attacks were at a 200-year high. 3 outer colonies had been abandoned entirely, and the humans were gone. He had always believed that the galaxy ran on the strength of the elder races, the species who had been among the stars for thousands of years and who understood the way things worked. He had been wrong. The galaxy, it turned out, had been running on the backs of the youngest species in the room, the ones who ranked last in every vote, the ones whose ships were searched and whose colonies were caged and whose diplomats were ignored. the ones who had done more than anyone else and asked for nothing in return. And Vorath had let them be driven away. The reports kept coming. Every day, another system lost power, or food, or medicine, or hope. Every day, Draenei added new numbers to his growing file of what the galaxy had lost. And every day, the silence from human space remained absolute. Laura Dunn could not sleep. She had spent months trying to find a way to reach the humans, and every official channel was dead. But she had one thing that no one else in the council had. A personal frequency that Claire Bishop had given her years ago, during a late-night conversation over drinks. "For emergencies," Claire had said, with a small smile. Laura decided this was an emergency. She took a small, unarmed shuttle and flew to the edge of human space alone. It took her 3 days. When she arrived at the border, she broadcast on Claire's frequency. Her message was simple. "Claire, this is Laura. I am alone. I am not here on council orders. Please talk to me." Then she waited. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. Laura sat in her tiny cockpit, watching the stars, and trying not to think about how far she was from anyone who could help her if something went wrong. After 3 hours, a single human ship appeared. It was a small patrol vessel, sleek and quiet. The pilot's voice came through her speakers. "Laura Dunn, this is Caleb Stone. Follow me, please." Caleb escorted her to a small station just inside human territory. It was clean and well-maintained, but modest. Not a military base, not a fortress, just a quiet outpost at the edge of home. Claire Bishop was waiting for her in a small meeting room, with a table, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out at the stars. Claire looked different from the last time Laura had seen her. She looked rested. Her eyes were clear, but there was a sadness in them that had not been there before. The kind that came from making a decision that was right and painful at the same time. "Thank you for seeing me," Laura said. "You were always welcome, Laura. You were always different from the rest of them." Laura sat down. "I need to ask you to come back." Claire shook her head slowly. "We will not come back. Millions of people." "I know." Claire's voice was steady, but her hands were folded tightly on the table. "We know everything that is happening. We have been watching, and every report breaks my heart. But we did not cause this, Laura. The Council caused this. For 40 years, we gave everything we had. We fed the hungry, we healed the sick, we fixed what was broken, we protected the weak, and the Council's answer was to put us in a cage. The containment provision was wrong. Everyone knows that now. Everyone knows it now because they are suffering. They did not know it when we were the only ones suffering." Laura was quiet. She could not argue with that. "We are not angry," Claire continued. "That is what I need you to understand. We are not doing this out of spite or revenge. We are simply done. We spent 40 years trying to earn a place at the table, and we were never given one. And we are happy here." Laura leaned forward. "Is there anything at all that would bring you back to the Council?" Claire was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, a human cargo ship passed silently, its running lights blinking in the dark. "We will not return to the Council," Claire said finally. "But if the Council comes to us, not with demands, not with threats, but with honesty, we will listen. That is all I can offer." Laura nodded. She understood. She flew back to Aralis and went straight to the Council chamber. She requested an emergency audience and told them everything. She told them about Claire's words, about the sadness in her eyes, about the quiet station at the edge of human space. She told them that humanity was not broken, not desperate, not waiting to be rescued. They were fine. They were thriving. They simply did not need the Council anymore. The room was divided. Vorath's first instinct was anger. "They dare to set conditions," he said. "They leave the galaxy to burn and then tell us to come begging?" Elder Pale stood up. He moved slowly, his ancient body protesting every motion. But when he spoke, his voice filled the chamber. He began to talk. He talked about the first human ship that had arrived at Aralis 40 years ago, small and battered, and full of people who smiled at everyone they met. He talked about the human doctors who cured the Velith plague. He talked about Aaron Cross and his team rebuilding the Crescent relay network. He talked about Ethan Grant's convoys feeding the Marathi. He talked about human patrol ships guarding borders that were not their own. He talked for 2 hours. He named missions. He named numbers. He named the dead who were alive because of human hands. When he finished, the chamber was completely silent. Then Pale said, "We did not lose the humans because they were weak. We lost them because we were cruel to the only species that ever helped us without asking for anything in return. 40 million Marathi are dead. A plague is spreading across 5 worlds. Our communications are broken. Our borders are undefended. And all of this happened because we could not bring ourselves to treat kind people with kindness. That is not their failure. That is ours." Vorath stood still for a long time. Then he turned to Selvek. "Prepare a delegation. I will lead it myself." Selvek's face twisted. "You cannot be serious. This is surrender." Vorath looked at him. "Billions are dying, Selvek. If my pride must die to save them, then let it die." He turned to the chamber. "I call for a vote. A formal delegation to human space, led by me, with the purpose of requesting, not demanding, their return." Every single delegate, even Selvek, raised their hand. For the first time in 40 years, the council had agreed on something about humanity. And it only took the galaxy falling apart to make it happen. The delegation left Auralis on a clear morning, if morning meant anything in the endless dark of space. Vorath's ship led a small fleet of 12 vessels, one from each of the major council species. They carried no weapons, no soldiers, no demands, just diplomats, and something that the council had never brought to humans before: humility. The journey to human space took 4 days. On the last day, as they approached the border, the automated buoys that had turned Selvek away months ago transmitted a different message. "Authorized vessel detected. You may proceed. Welcome to human space." Vorath read the message on his screen and felt something he did not expect: relief. Admiral Danny Mercer met them at the border with a small honor guard of 6 ships. Danny's voice came through the communication channel, calm and professional. "High Legislator Vorath, I am Admiral Mercer. I will escort your delegation to Earth. Please follow my lead." As the alien fleet moved through human territory, the delegates pressed against their windows and watched. They had expected to see a civilization in retreat, struggling colonies, empty stations, a species licking its wounds in the dark corners of space. Instead, they saw something that took their breath away. Human worlds were thriving. Cities glowed on the surfaces of green and blue planets. Orbital stations hummed with activity. Trade ships moved in steady streams between systems. Factories produced. Farms grew. Schools taught. Hospitals healed. Life was everywhere, busy and bright, and completely self-sufficient. Archivist Drenai, who had been invited on the delegation at Vorath's request, sat at his data terminal and ran the numbers. Human economic output had actually grown since the withdrawal. Without the burden of supporting half the galaxy, human resources had been redirected inward. Infrastructure had been improved. New colonies had been founded. Research had accelerated. The humans had not retreated out of weakness. They had retreated because they chose to. And without the weight of the galaxy on their shoulders, they had flourished. Drenai leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. "They never needed us," he said quietly to himself. "We needed them." Earth was blue and beautiful. The delegation landed in Geneva, in a park beside a lake surrounded by mountains. The air was clean and cool, and birds sang in the trees. Several of the alien delegates had never been to a planet with a living biosphere this rich. They stood on the grass and looked around with wide eyes. They were taken to a conference hall, a simple building with large windows and a long wooden table. No gold, no grand displays of power. Just a room where people could sit and talk. On one side of the table sat the human leadership: Claire Bishop, Kyle Patton, Danny Mercer, Ethan Grant, Natalie Voss, Aaron Cross, Megan Tate, and Tessa Hale. 8 people, dressed simply, sitting calmly, waiting. On the other side sat Vorath, Selvek, Gorith, Drenai, Laura Dunn, Elder Pale, and representatives from 6 other species. They looked tired. They looked worried. Some of them looked ashamed. Vorath stood. He had prepared a speech, written and rewritten over 4 days. But when he looked across the table at Claire Bishop's steady eyes, the words on his datapad felt hollow and small. He set the datapad down. "I had a speech," he said, "but I am going to speak plainly instead." He took a breath. The containment provision was unjust. We knew it when we passed it, and we passed it anyway. For 40 years we treated your species as lesser. We took your aid and gave nothing in return. We used your engineers, your doctors, your soldiers, and your farmers, and we repaid them with contempt. You carried burdens that were not yours to carry, and when you grew tired, we put more weight on your back. His voice cracked, just slightly. He did not try to hide it. 40 million Marathi are dead because of decisions this council made. A plague is killing people across 5 worlds, because we drove away the only species that knew how to stop it. Our communication networks are broken. Our borders are open to raiders. And all of this, every bit of it, is our fault, not yours. He looked down at the table for a moment. Then he looked up again. I am here to ask, not demand, that you give us a chance to make this right. I know we have not earned it. I know that trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. But I am asking anyway, because my pride is a small thing compared to the lives that depend on what happens in this room today. The room was silent. Kyle Patton looked at Claire. She nodded slightly. Kyle stood. His voice was quiet but clear. We did not leave to punish you, he said. I want you to understand that. We left because staying was killing us. Not our bodies, but our belief that the galaxy could be fair. We need that belief. It is part of who we are. Humans do not help others because we expect payment. We help because we believe it is right. But when the people we help turn around and put chains on us, something inside breaks, and we could not let it break any further. He paused. We are willing to listen, and we have terms. Claire Bishop stood and placed a simple document on the table. No fancy technology, no holographic displays, just words on paper. These are our conditions for re-engagement with the Council, she said. First, full and equal voting rights. 1 species, 1 vote, no rankings. Second, the removal of all discriminatory trade tariffs on human goods and services. Third, formal recognition of human territorial rights, including the systems we have settled during the withdrawal. Fourth, the creation of a joint humanitarian command with shared authority, so that no single species bears the burden of feeding and healing the galaxy alone. And fifth, she paused and looked around the room. A public galactic archive, documenting what humanity contributed over the past 40 years, and what was done to us in return, not as a weapon, not as a tool for shame, but as a record, so that no species, human or otherwise, is ever treated this way again. She sat down. Vorath read the document. It was not harsh. It was not vengeful. There were no demands for reparations, no calls for punishment, no requirements for anyone to kneel or grovel. The terms were fair. The kind of fair that made you realize how unfair everything had been before. He looked at Selvek. Selvek opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, Gorath placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. The war chief looked at Selvek with hard eyes, and slowly shook his head. Selvek closed his mouth and looked away. "We accept," Vorath said, "every term." The treaty was signed that afternoon. They called it the Geneva Accord. The signing ceremony was quiet. There was no celebration, no cheering, no music. There was too much grief for that. Too many dead. Too many years wasted. The delegates signed their names, shook hands, and sat in silence for a while, each of them carrying the weight of what had been lost and what might still be saved. That evening, Danny Mercer stood on the observation deck of the Pale Horse, which was docked at Aurelis for the first time in over a year. The station looked the same as it always had: bright lights and busy corridors, and the hum of 100 different species living side by side. But something felt different. Lighter, maybe, or just more honest. Claire joined him at the window. They stood together, looking at the stars. "Do you think it will be different this time?" she asked. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think they finally understand that kindness is not weakness, and silence is not surrender." Claire smiled, just slightly. "I hope you are right." "So do I." The next morning, the first human aid convoy in over a year launched from Earth. Ethan Grant was at the helm of the lead ship, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His destination was the Marathi homeworld. His cargo bays were full of grain, medicine, and water purifiers. Enough to feed 1 million people for 6 months. As his convoy entered the hyperspace lane, something happened that had never happened before. Alien ships appeared on either side of him. Not Dralith patrol ships coming to inspect his cargo. Not council enforcers coming to block his path. Escort ships. 6 of them, from 6 different species, falling into formation around the human convoy like an honor guard. No one had ordered them to be there. No resolution had been passed. No votes had been taken. They were there because they chose to be. Because they wanted to be. Because for the first time in 40 years, the galaxy was choosing to stand with humanity instead of standing on them. Caleb Stone, flying one of the convoy ships near the back of the formation, looked out at the alien escorts through his cockpit window. He watched their lights blinking in the dark, steady and sure, flying beside him instead of against him. He had been searched, detained, insulted, and sent home with empty cargo bays by ships just like these. But that was before, and this was now. He allowed himself a small smile. Then he opened a channel and spoke. "Convoy away. We are glad to be back." Somewhere across the vast and quiet dark, the galaxy breathed again. Claire Bishop stood alone on the observation deck of Station Aurelis. The great window stretched from floor to ceiling, and through it she could see the slow turn of distant stars. They looked peaceful from here, cold and far away, but peaceful. She wished she felt the same. She had just come from the council chamber, 3 hours of sitting in a hard chair, while 32 species decided the future of her people. 3 hours of listening to voices that did not care what she had to say. 3 hours of watching alien faces look through her like she was not even there. It had been like this for 40 years. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 4 decades ago after human scientists cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel on their own. No one had helped them. No elder race had come down to lift them up or teach them the way. Humans had figured it out alone, in a small lab on a blue planet that most of the galaxy had never heard of. And when they stepped out into the stars, they did so with open hands and hopeful hearts. The galaxy did not return the kindness. From the very first day, humanity was treated as the lowest member of the council. Their votes carried the least weight. Their trade tariffs were the highest of any species. Their colonies were limited to the worst systems in the most distant corners of map space. And their ships were stopped and searched by Dralith hegemony patrols so often that human captains had started keeping their identification papers taped to the dashboards of their cockpits, just to save time. Claire had spent 6 years as the lead diplomat of the United Earth delegation. 6 years of smiling when she wanted to scream. 6 years of presenting facts, data, and reason to a room that had already made up its mind. She was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. The kind that settled into the bones and stayed. She pulled out her communicator and typed a message to Kyle Patton, the Human Defense Secretary back on Earth. The message was short. Diplomacy has reached its end. They passed the containment provision today. 28 votes in favor. We are done here, Kyle. She sent it and put the communicator away. 8,000 light-years away, Kyle Patton sat in his office in Geneva. It was late evening. The city outside his window was quiet, and the lake reflected the last orange light of the setting sun. He read Claire's message twice. Then he closed his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. He had hoped it would not come to this. He had spent years building something in secret, a plan that no one outside a very small circle knew about. A plan called the Exodus Protocol. It was not a weapon. It was simply a door. And once it closed, it would not open again easily. He picked up a secure line and made 4 calls. At Outpost Jericho, on the far edge of human space, Admiral Danny Mercer received the first call. Danny was a tall man, with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen too much. He had served in the human fleet for 14 years, patrolling borders that the Council barely acknowledged, and protecting trade lanes that alien species used freely but never thanked humans for maintaining. He listened to Kyle's words, nodded once, and said, "Understood." The second call went to Megan Tate, head of human intelligence. Megan was already aware. Her networks had picked up the vote results before Claire's message had even reached Earth. She had been preparing files and timelines for weeks. When Kyle told her it was time, she simply said, "My teams are ready." The third call went to Natalie Voss, the astrophysicist who had spent the last 3 years quietly mapping every human asset, outpost, relay station, and aid mission across the galaxy. She had built a complete picture of exactly how deeply humanity was woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. The numbers were staggering, and no one in the Council had ever bothered to count. The fourth call went to Ethan Grant, captain of Earth's agricultural and relief convoy fleet. Ethan was a soft-spoken man who had spent most of his career flying food and medicine to alien worlds that could not feed or heal themselves. He had saved more lives than he could count, and not once had anyone from the Council said thank you. When Kyle told him to begin the recall, Ethan paused for a long time. Then he said, "I understand. I will bring them home." That night, Kyle Patton walked into a sealed briefing room beneath the old United Nations building. The room was small and plain, with a single round table and 7 chairs. Seated around it, some in person and some by holographic link, were Danny Mercer, Megan Tate, Natalie Voss, Ethan Grant, Tessa Hale, who ran Earth's long-range sensor network, and Aaron Cross, the chief engineer who had personally rebuilt half the communication relays in Council space. Kyle placed a small data chip on the table. "The containment provision passed today," he said. "They want to lock us into 3 systems and cut us off from 70% of all hyperspace lanes. After everything we have done, after every life we have saved, after every broken thing we have fixed." He looked around the table. Every face was still. "We are not going to fight them. We are not going to argue. We are not going to beg. We are going to do something they will never expect. We are going to leave. Quietly, completely. And we are going to let them find out what the galaxy looks like without us." No one spoke for a long moment. Then Danny Mercer leaned back in his chair and said, "When do we start?" Kyle looked at him. "Tonight." And so it began. On the human colony of New Bristol, The governor received a sealed order and began powering down the public communication relay that connected her world to the council network. On the research station orbiting Kepler 9, scientists packed their equipment and boarded transport ships. On the medical frigate Hope's Passage, doctors finished their last round of treatments for a ward full of alien patients, handed over their notes to the local staff, and walked quietly to the docking bay. No one made speeches. No one sent angry messages to the council. No one fired a single shot. Across the galaxy, one by one, human lights began to go out. Outposts went dark. Relay stations transmitted their final automated messages and fell silent. Trade posts closed their doors. Ships turned their transponders off and slipped away into the black. Claire Bishop was the last to leave Station Aralis. She walked through the corridors she had walked 1,000 times before, past the chambers where she had argued for her people's dignity and been ignored every single time. She carried nothing but a small bag. At the docking port, she stopped and looked back one last time. The station hummed around her, full of alien voices and alien lives, none of which noticed her leaving. She boarded her ship and flew home. Behind her, the galaxy continued to spin, unaware that the quietest species in its history had just walked away, and that the silence they left behind was about to become the loudest sound the council had ever heard.